Thank you for joining me for this week's video. This week we're going to dive in and talk about the PPP Forgiveness Application Form 3508EZ, which we're just going to refer to as the EZ PPP Forgiveness Application. We're going to discuss very briefly what is it, who can use it. There's some refining to the owner non-cash compensation elements that I want to make sure you are aware of, although I don't think we're going to need to tread into the world of non-cash compensation given the allowable covered period of 24 weeks that we now have thanks to the PPP Flexibility Act of 2020. And then we're also going to talk about what documentation is needed, both to submit with your EZ PPP forgiveness application and to make sure that you retain it. And I'll reiterate it now and a couple of times throughout the video. You will be needing to retain that documentation for 6 years. So what is this EZ forgiveness application? Well, it's a short form. There's basically 2 pages of applicable information that you're going to have to fill out. It does have a restricted use, but that restricted use utilizes this new business activity safe harbor we talked about in the last video, which is applicable to all of the practices that we work with and hopefully the vast majority of this audience. What makes this an easy application is it excludes those FTE calculations and worksheets. It incorporates that new guidance for owner-employee non-cash compensation. And while it is streamlined, like I said, there's some significant documentation that's required that I want to make sure you're aware of and we're collecting as we go through your covered period. So first, what are the 3 situations in which you can use the EZ PPP loan forgiveness application? Well, first, if you're an individual owner with no employees, if no employees were included in your PPP application, then use this streamlined approach. Second, for a borrower who retained all of their staff in entirety throughout the entire covered period, so they did not reduce salary or wages by more than 25%, and there was no reduction in the number of employees, so they're not going to use that safe harbor like we're going to use. And then the final group, which applies to really kind of everybody I think who is watching this video, is those who qualify for that business activity safe harbor. We still have to acknowledge that we did not reduce salary or wages by more than 25%, keeping in mind that that's the per hour wage, not that we didn't reduce the number of hours due to business activity. And that we were unable to operate during the covered period at the same level of business activity due to compliance with requirements or guidance by certain federal organizations, which we'll cover those again. But next I want to talk about that non-cash compensation for the owner and employee owners. So C Corps and S Corps will get lumped into this, and really it's kind of an awkward way that they did it, but going kind of across the chart here. So for a sole prop and for a general partner, all owners are going to be subject to that 2.5 month cap against the $100,000 cash compensation cap. So that equates to that $20,833. So you see that for everybody, that applies to cash compensation. So back to sole props and general partners. You will not be able to seek forgiveness for retirement benefits, nor will you be able to seek forgiveness for health benefits. If you're a C Corp, you can include retirement benefits paid by the company and health benefits paid by the company as well. For an S Corp, you can include retirement benefits, but you cannot include health benefits. So kind of bring this chart up a little bit, take a look at it. Again, I imagine we're going to exhaust all of our PPP dollars with cash compensation. That will make it the easiest in seeking forgiveness. But if you were using any of those dollars for your retirement benefits or your health benefits, depending on how your organization is structured, how your practice is structured from a tax purpose, it will dictate what can be included. So I wanted to make sure we were all aware of these restrictions. Now for the documents to include, and as I mentioned, I want you to kind of be preparing these documents as we are going through your covered period. We're going to start first with payroll. We need our bank account statements or the third-party payroll report for the covered period. you'll need to collect your tax forms or an equivalent form from your payroll provider. Keep in mind, this can be overlapping the time period. So these are generally quarterly reports, so as long as you're including the quarters that are subject to the covered period, will be good. You don't have to get overly crafty in terms of the date restrictions on it. So you want to include that Form 941 or the equivalent information, and then also the state quarterly wage report and unemployment insurance filings that you do. And then finally, for the health insurance or the retirement plans, we want to include payment of receipt, canceled check, and the account statements. If you did check the box for no reduction in full-time equivalent, right, that second group that can use this easy PPP form, where they did not reduce any of their staff over the time period, then that borrower must provide the average FTE from January 1st all the way through the end of their covered period. For the non-payroll elements, so mortgage interest, you want to have your loan amortization schedule along with proof of payment for your mortgage payments. Or we can have a lender account statement from February of 2020 and the lender account statements for the covered time period. If we're doing our lease payment and we're seeking forgiveness, you want a copy of a current lease agreement. And they say a current lease agreement, keep in mind, needs to be current in terms of it is your active lease agreement, but it had to be in existence prior to February 15th of 2020. And then you're going to need to include proof of payment as that. Also, on the business utility payment, so if you're including some business utility expenses in your forgiveness, you want copies of the invoices from February 2020. We can't seek forgiveness for more than what we were paying in February of 2020. And we'll want our account statements for the covered period as well. Now, there also is a list of documents that you need to maintain, but likely do not have to submit. It really will be to your lender in terms of the documentation they want, but explicit in the Easy PPP loan forgiveness application is this list of documentation that if the SBA came back to ask for any of the documents around your PPP loan or your forgiveness application, they will be looking for these documents for up to a 6-year period. So we want to have documentation that there is no salary or wage reduction greater than 25%. That can be payroll records showing each employee the amount that they were paid from January 1st to March 31st, and then the amount that they were paid during the covered period. Remember, if we had a decrease in hours, but not the wage per hour, that's not going to count against you. Documentation of employees who had a job offer but refused, who had a refusal from your employee to have their hours restored, and really any change, individual to the employee, any change in terms of how your employees looked when we got to the end of your covered period. So anything that documents firing for cause or resignation or a written request from an employee for a reduction in their hours. Also, we need to have that documentation of disruption to business activity between March 1st and December 31st. My team and I are looking at some of the guidance that came out from the CDC. Hopefully we'll include something in this video or in a subsequent video that speaks directly to the dental industry, but we want to have that documentation from HHS, CDC, or OSHA, and it needs to show the requirements for each borrower's location. Also, relevant borrower financial records. So for those weeks that we were shut down, for that month that covers those shutdowns, get together your production reports, get together the monthly profit and loss statement, and then likely from some of your office software, grab some of the patient scheduling so that we can just show that we had that significant disruption when our practice was shut down. We also want to make sure that we include just all the documents related to the actual PPP loan itself. So the original application, any of the documentation that you received when you got the loan from your lender, just get that all packaged up. And as I've been talking to clients and saying, have it ready, have it in the shoebox. We're going to keep it up there for 6 years, and then hopefully we can get rid of it and we'll all move on with life from there. So that's ultimately what that Easy PPP loan forgiveness application form is going to look like. As I mentioned, want to make sure that you understand how you qualify for it, the restrictions that it introduces and continues to refine for the owner compensation, as well as the myriad of documentation we're still going to need to gather, submit, and or maintain over this period. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out to me or a member of the PIWM team at Buckingham, and thank you very much for watching this. Have a great day.